What's up? Did you have a good night last night? Yeah, I hope small groups were really good, and I loved seeing people stand up and surrender to Jesus. That was pretty amazing. So, yeah. So this morning, though, you guys, I wanted to start off. Asking you guys a little question. Have y'all ever quit anything before? Ever quit anything? Yeah, you can put your hands down. I was thinking about this, and I was like, yo, like I've quit plenty of things in my life. I got all kinds of stories of things that I started, and then I didn't see it through to the end. Some of it was positive, right? Some things that I've quit, I should have quit. And then other things I regret, you know what I'm saying? But I was thinking about this in preparation for this morning, and so for me, I was thinking, when was the first time that I actually like remember quitting something? And the first time that I remember actually quitting something, besides a game of Monopoly, you know what I'm saying? Where you're like, I hate this game, you know, besides that kind of quitting, you know what I'm saying? Like the first time I remember actually quitting something that I had started or signed up for was when I was in 6th grade, and in 6th grade I had asked my mom to sign me up for guitar lessons. And I know some of y'all just laughed, right? Okay, thank you for doubting my talent. But when I was in 6th grade, I'd gone to summer camp, and I had seen that at summer camp, all the dudes that were surrounded by ladies, swoon, 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 swoon. You know what I'm saying? Like all those guys, all they had guitars. They were the dudes that were hey girl, you know what I mean? And then all the girls were oh my God, he's so hot. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, it's whatever. It's if Brett Stanfield sat in the hallway and ladies so it's like that, you know what I mean? I was dang it, right? And so I'm in 6th grade, and girls are starting to become hey, what? You know what I'm saying? And I was yo, I'm trying to pull, so I need to learn guitar. I got to do something to help me out because I'm short and I haven't hit puberty yet. And so I'm come on, I need to learn guitar, right? And so I was Mom, you got to sign me up for guitar lessons so that girls will like me. And so my mom was all right, sweetheart, you know what I'm saying? We'll sign you up for guitar, right? And so they got me this guitar, and I went, and y'all, going into it, I had this expectation that I was gonna pick up this guitar and immediately become a rock god. You know what I'm saying? I thought that was gonna be it. I was gonna pick it up and just be you know what I'm saying? Or that I was gonna know all the chords, and that I would be able to pull up at camp and be I'm on my way, driving at 90, and all the girls would be oh my God, yes! You know what I'm saying? I was yo, this is what it's gonna be like. It's gonna be so good. I'll be leading worship tonight, don't worry. And so I was yo, it's gonna be like that. And I remember I got into my first guitar lessons, and this dude was trying to teach me some chords, and my little tiny 6th grade hands on this guitar that was too big for my body, I was you know, and I could barely press down the chord, and instead of it sounding like a chord when I strummed it, it sounded more like a dying animal. And so I was what? I suck, you know what I'm saying? It was terrible, right? And so I was trying to practice for a couple weeks, y'all. My hands were hurting. My tiny little fingers were bleeding, and I was this is the worst. I suck at this. I don't want to do it, and this is not what I expected, right? And so I can remember 2 weeks into guitar lessons, not becoming the rock god that I thought I was going to be, and I just gave up. I quit. I was yeah, I don't want to do this. This is way too hard. This is not what I expected. This is not what it was supposed to be like, and so I quit. And chances are, right, if you and I were to sit down and to swap stories, if we were to get to hang out, we could swap some stories of moments where your expectations weren't met, and so you quit something, right? You've all got stories where you've given up on something. You started it well, but then you didn't see it through because it wasn't what you expected, right? And I've been thinking about this, yo, why is it that we quit? Why is it that we so often start things, but we don't see them through and we don't finish them? And I think that one of the biggest reasons why this happens, you guys, one of the biggest reasons why we start things but we don't see them through, one of the reasons why we start things but we don't stick with them, one of the reasons why we quit and we give up, it has everything to do with this right here. Expectations. It's expectations. When it comes to the things that we start but we don't see through, when it comes to the things that we give up on, when it comes to the things that we quit, I think it has everything to do with our expectations. You see, every time we start something, every time we step into something, we walk into it with expectations. We walk into it with a way that we think it's going to be and the way that we think it's going to be like and how we think it's going to go. And when your expectations, right, don't match your experience, that gap, it's called disappointment. Like when your expectations don't match your experience, when all of a sudden you get hit with reality and the experience that you have does not match the expectations that you had, that gap, you guys, is called disappointment. And when you're smacked in the face with some disappointment, you got one of two options. You can either do this, endure, or you can quit. Like when your expectations don't match your experience and you're hit with disappointment, you can either endure or quit. And what most of us tend to do is we quit. And the greater the gap, you guys, the greater the gap of disappointment, the greater the gap between what you expect and what you experience, the easier it is to quit, right? And you guys, the reason why I'm talking about this morning, the reason why I'm like kind of hitting you with this like quitter talk this morning is because there was a lot of you last night and you started following Jesus. Or there's been a lot of you in the past year at InsideOut and you've started following Jesus. And I think it's amazing that you started following Jesus. But here's the deal. It's one thing to start following Jesus and it's another thing to stay following Jesus. It's one thing to start following Jesus, and it's a completely different thing to stay following Jesus. And here's the deal, just cards on the table this morning, you guys. Like I want you to stay following Jesus. Your student, Darren wants you to stay following Jesus. It's amazing that you started following Jesus, but it's life-changing when you stay following Jesus. So we want you to stay with it. And so this morning, what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about some of your expectations, because there's this expectation, like I think that, and I don't know where it's been set. Like maybe it was us, maybe it's our fault in the church, maybe it's because you're looking at other people, maybe it's, some pastors that you listen to, maybe it's just because you Googled Christianity or something like that. But there's some expectations, like in our culture today, that somehow that like if you start following Jesus, that everything's gonna be like rainbows and butterflies. Like all of a sudden, like you and Jesus are gonna be like holding baby lambs and skipping through fields, and that all of a sudden everything in your life, like it's all gonna be like straight roads and green lights and no hard times. And if anything bad happens, that now all of a sudden like God's not with you or God's not real or God doesn't love you. And so there's this like expectation out there that's being set. And y'all, if that's your expectation, you're gonna be really, really disappointed. You're gonna be so disappointed, right, if that's your expectation. And then when that disappointment comes, you're gonna have two options, to endure or quit. And if your expectation is that everything was gonna be easy and everything's not easy, then you're gonna quit. And so this morning I want us to talk about expectations, because I think one of the biggest reasons why young people give up on their faith is because of expectations. Because of unmet expectations, because of unreal expectations, because you walked into Christianity thinking that God promised you something that God never promised. And so I want us to talk about this morning. And to do that, we're going to take a look at the life of David, because you guys, David, one of the most amazing things, one of the things that I appreciate so much about the life of David is that David didn't just start following God, he stayed following God. He stayed following God throughout his entire life, like to the bitter end. David stayed following God, like through all of life's ups and downs. He stayed following God through some stuff, you guys, that if I'm being honest, like when you read his story, he stayed following God through some stuff that I don't know if I would have stayed following God through. You see, we left the story last night where David had surrendered his mess to God, and God came in and brought love and forgiveness and grace and a fresh start. And if you were writing this story, like that would have been like the beginning of his fairy tale ending, right? Like then David would have, gotten the girl, and he would have lived happily ever after in his kingdom of Camelot, and they would have been like, yes, Lord, Daddy Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so it would have been like so amazing, right? Like that would have been the way, if you were writing this, like that you would have ended the fairy tale ending. But that's not the way David's life ends up going, right? He surrenders his mess to God. God meets him in the mess and comes in and begins to change his life. But everything doesn't go the way that you and I would have planned it for David. Everything doesn't go that way. As a matter of fact, like the things actually get really, really rough for David for a while. So the kid that David and Bathsheba had and that she was pregnant with, they end up losing the kid right after that whole situation goes down where David surrenders his mess to God. They end up losing the kid, which is devastating. And that would be bad enough, but David and Bathsheba and David, and he has some other wives on the side. I know it's like sister wives, it's weird. But David ends up like he has some more kids later on down the road. And one of these sons ends up later on down the road, ends up copping feelings for one of his sisters. And you're like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, and so he ends up copping feelings for one of his sisters, and he decides, not just do I think she's hot, but I'm gonna make some moves on her, right? This is like straight Alabama stuff. Like, and so, I know, roll tide, right? So, sorry. I know. Nick Saban, if you're watching, I'm sorry. So this is wild, right? Like this is wild. The son decides he's gonna act on it. And so the son, he acts like he's sick one day and asks his sister to make him some chicken noodle soup. She comes with the bowl of soup, and he's sitting on the bed like, hey girl, why don't you come sit next to me and give me that soup? You know what I'm saying? Like, and so then she's like, you're nasty, you your daddy's son. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so I know. And so like she's like, you're gross. She rejects him. He gets mad, y'all. Listen, it gets crazy. This kid gets mad at his sister for rejecting his advances, and then he ends up forcing himself on her and raping her. His own sister. And y'all, when David hears about that, he's devastated. He's heartbroken. He's crushed. He's like, what? I definitely did not raise you that way. Like, why would you do something like that? And so David, in his heartbrokenness, he ends up exiling that son. Kicks him out. He's like, yo, you got to get out of here. But now listen, like some of David's other sons, they thought, yeah, that's not harsh enough, David. That's not harsh enough, Dad. Like you should have done something way worse. And so one of the sons takes it into his own hands to bring about justice for this whole situation. And this son, he ends up throwing a party, and he invites all of his brothers and sisters over. And the party's popping. And in the middle of the party, when everyone's on the dance floor, this son walks up to the other son, and he stabs him to death. And David's even more heartbroken. He's devastated. He's like, yo, what is happening to my family? My whole family is falling apart. I got kids raping kids. I got kids killing kids. Like, what is going on? This is not what I would have planned. And so all of a sudden, like, David's got a mess on his hands, right? And this other son then goes about trying to take the kingdom from his dad because he thinks he could do a better job. And so there's this whole big family drama, this family mess. This is like Game of Thrones on steroids. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is like, it's wild. And all of a sudden, like, David ends up in this huge family feud. And in the midst of that family feud, one of David's best friends ends up killing his son. And in all of this, right? Like, in all of this, people at some point are just going like, yo, bro, like, God is either not real or he has turned his back on you. There's one point where someone even like runs out of their house as David is like running away from his son and his army. The guy runs out of his house and just begins mocking David and going like, God is obviously doesn't love you anymore. And in the midst of all of that, you guys, that kind of stuff would make any of us like want to throw in the towel and give up and go, yeah, I can't. Like, God, either you're not real or you're not with me, but something's wrong because this is not what I had planned. This is not what I was thinking. This is not what I signed up for. In the midst of all of that, you guys, David, he ended up like still following God and trusting in God. He actually wrote these words, and I'm going to read them out of my Bible because I didn't tell them in the back to put them up there, but this is my Bible, and it's special, and I like it, and you can listen. And so this is what David wrote in the midst of all of that. In the midst of all of that, as things are falling apart around him, as things are not going the way that he would have planned, as things are not probably what others would have expected would be true of his life, this is what David wrote in Psalm 25. He says, to you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. In you I trust, oh my God. In you I trust, oh my God. In the midst of all of that stuff, you guys, David continues to follow. He continues to trust. He continues to lean into and sticks with God. And you guys, as I read that and as I read the life of David and his story and I read what happened and I read all of that stuff, I got to be honest. Like, as I read that and then I read the words that he wrote, if I'm being real, like, I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he endured. Like, I remember reading that for the first time and thinking, y'all, if that was my baby girl, that was my little girl, or if that was my son, like if my son disappointed me like that, I'm like, yo, dude, I don't know. I don't know if I could keep following. I probably would have given up. And I read that and I go, how did he do it? How did David keep following God? And you guys, I think it has everything to do with that word that we talked about right at the beginning, his expectations. You see, I think it goes way back to a promise that God made to David back before all of this mess went down. Way back early when David had first become king, God made David a promise, and he gave him a glimpse of his future. And in that promise, God let David know some things about the journey that they were going to be on together. And in that, God began to set David's expectations so that he could have an enduring heart, so that he wouldn't just start following God, but he would stay following God. And so I want to show you that promise. And I don't want you guys to get tripped up. There's a bunch of things that God promises that you're going to be like, what? I don't understand. But listen, like, I don't have time to unpack it all. I just want you to see what God gave him a glimpse of and some of the things that God promised him in this, and then we'll unpack it together. So here's what it says. It says, but that night the word of the Lord came to Nathan saying, go and tell my servant David, and this is the promise. This is what the Lord says. Are you the one to build me a house to dwell in? I have not dwelt in a house from the day I brought the Israelites up out of Egypt to this day. I have been moving from place to place with a tent as my dwelling. Wherever I have moved with all the Israelites, did I ever say to any of their rulers whom I commanded to shepherd my people Israel, why have you not built me a house of cedar? Now then, tell my servant David, this is what the Lord Almighty says. I took you from the pasture, from tending the flock, and appointed you ruler over my people Israel. I've been with you wherever you have gone, and I've cut off all of your enemies from before you. Now I will make your name great, like the names of the greatest men on the earth, and I will provide a place for my people Israel, and I will plant them so that they can have a home of their own and no longer be disturbed. Wicked people will not oppress them anymore as they did at the beginning and have done ever since the time I appointed leaders over my people Israel. I will also give you rest from all of your enemies. The Lord declares to you that the Lord himself will establish a house for you. And when your days are over and you rest with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you in your own flesh and blood, and I will establish his kingdom. He is the one who will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he will be my son. And when he does wrong, I will punish him with a rod wielded by men, with floggings inflicted by human hands. But my love will never be taken away from him, as I took it away from Saul, whom I removed from before you. Your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever. So God sends Nathan to David to give him a promise. And in this, he's given David a glimpse of his future. And he's reminding David, look, David, I took you out of nothing and I made you something. And I've got a plan, and I've got a purpose, and I've got a hope, and I've got a future. I've got some things for you, right? And I promise you, like we're doing big things together, David. I've got greatness for you, but it's not going to be easy. He's like, I'll give you rest from your enemies, but you're still going to have enemies. He's like, I promise you, like when you make mistakes though, like there's going to be consequences. You'll still face consequences, David. There will still be hard times ahead. I promise you I've got a plan. I promise you I've got a future. I promise you I've got a hope. I promise you I got great things for you, but it's not going to be easy. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, David. Just remember in the midst of all of this that my love will never be taken away from you, that I'm always going to be with you. God begins to give David this promise, and in this promise, he is setting his expectations, letting him know, hey, you know what, like this will not be easy, but I promise you it's going to be good. It's not going to be easy, but I promise you it's going to be good. It's going to be good, so stick with me. So stay with me. And you guys, I think that God in this moment, he is setting David's expectations so that he'll be able to endure. Because God knows what the future holds, and he knows that there's hard times ahead, and he wants him to remember that, hey, you know what? Like I promise, it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be good. And so he begins to set his expectations so then David is able to endure. This promise almost reminds me of like this conversation that Jesus had with some of his followers towards the end of his life, when Jesus was about to leave the earth, he had this conversation with some of his followers, and he began to describe for them what it was going to be like when he was gone. And in that conversation, he begins to set their expectations and let them know what things are going to be like. Because I think some of them were thinking that when Jesus left, that all of a sudden, when he was going to come back immediately, like the next day, and be like riding on a horse with like knives and stuff, and be like, yeah, and take over. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so they thought it was going to be easy. It's going to be amazing. Everything's going to happen the way that we want it to happen. And Jesus starts to set their expectation, and he begins to start to tell them, he says, hey, look, it's going to be hard. Like, I'm going to leave. You're going to start doing my work. You're going to start taking my message all over the world. You're just loving people, forgiving people. You guys are going to be world changers, difference makers, all that good stuff. But he says it's not going to be easy. He starts to let them know, like, yo, there's going to be challenges. Not everybody is going to like you, and not everything is going to go your way. It's not going to be like a bump-free road. He's like, it's going to be challenging. Jesus ends the conversation with them, and he kind of closes with this remark. This is what he says. He says, I told you these things so that you would know and have peace. In this world, you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. But take heart, I have overcome the world. Now, y'all, listen. Look at me real quick. I know this is not a sexy message. I know that this is not like the go carpe, the DM seize the day. You can do anything you want to do. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and score all the touchdowns and get all the ladies. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know that this isn't like the sexy message that everybody wants to hear at camp, but listen, this is an important message. Because in like what we're talking about this morning is what Jesus wanted them to know. Like, he's setting expectations in their heart so that they're able to endure, so that they don't just start following, but they stay following. I know this isn't a sexy message, but listen, like, we need to talk about this, because when you know what to expect, then you're able to endure. When you know what to expect, then you're able to endure. And you won't just start, but you'll stay following Jesus. When I know what to expect, you guys, I'm able to endure. I think about, in the past 3 years, I've become a dad, and I got a 3-year-old little girl. I think we have a picture of her. There she is. She's me with lady parts. It's hilarious. She's amazing. I love her so much. And then I also have a little boy. His name's Miles. That's my little tank. This man does not get in the pool. He sits and eats snacks, right? So I got these 2 kids, right? And before I had kids, I actually I sat down and talked with some people, and I was like, yo, what's it gonna be like to have kids? And I remember I sat down actually with Darren, and Darren was like, it's hard and it sucks. You know what I'm saying? He said it just like that, it sucks, you know what I'm saying? And so I was like, all right, Darren, thank you for being real with me. And I remember he began setting my expectations. And so for me, you guys, like when it came to parenting, like I kind of began to like realize and like set in my heart, like I knew it was gonna be hard. I knew it was going to be hard. I knew there was going to be late nights. I knew there was going to be poopy diapers. I knew that there was going to be lots of crying, and I knew like all that. I knew I was going to be so tired. Like I knew it, right? And so I began to set that expectation in my heart so that when we finally brought that little baby home for the first time, like I wasn't like so mad that I just wanted to be like, puh! You know what I'm saying? So I was able, I had more patience. I had a little bit more grace. I was a little bit more willing, you know what I'm saying? But now listen, y'all, my wife, I think like her expectations were like, this is gonna be easy. We've got this. We're like amazing parents, go us. You know what I'm saying? And so my wife was thinking it was gonna be a little bit easier. And so because her expectations were that like, hey, we're gonna get this, and our kid's gonna be sleeping through the night on day 2, and the poopy diapers are just gonna be tiny a little bit, and it's not even gonna smell. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that like for her, like parenthood like hit her in the face, like, you know what I'm saying? Like it was like, whoa. And I can remember one night we were sitting in bed together, and she was like, what are we even doing? I hate this. Right? There's your sex talk right there. Practice abstinence. You know what I'm saying? It was like, yo, like it really, like it was devastating for her. It was hard, right? Because she didn't know what to expect. She didn't know what to expect, and so it hit her like so hard. And like there was a moment where she's going like, I don't know if we can do this. You know what I'm saying? Like, you see, you guys, when you know what to expect, you'll be able to endure. And so this morning, what I wanted just to have a brief conversation in closing with you guys, I just wanted you to know what you can expect when it comes to following Jesus. I want you to know what you can expect when it comes to following Jesus. I just want to level with you. I want to be honest with you. I want to give it to you like straight 100. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to be able, I want to give you those expectations like no bull. Like let's have a conversation real quick about what you can expect when it comes to following Jesus. Because I believe that if you know what to expect, you can ready yourself. Because it's not always going to be like this, right? Where everybody in the room is just like, yes, death was arrested. Oh, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not always going to be like this, where like you're like basically living with your small group and everyone's encouraging and everyone's supportive and you have happy cries together. It's not always going to be like this. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so because it's not always going to be like this, I just wanted to let you know what to expect, so that you don't just start, but you stay following Jesus. So some of the things that you can expect when it comes to following Jesus, here's the real, right? Like what you can expect when it comes to following Jesus is going to be challenging. It's going to be challenging. When it comes to following Jesus, if you're going to stay following Jesus, it is going to be challenging. You're going to go home and you're going to hear things in class that don't line up with things that you hear at church, and you're going to be like, what do I do with that? You're going to have some friends that when you go home, you're like, oh my gosh, I accepted Christ, it's amazing. And they're like, who cares? And you're like, ah, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's going to be some challenges that you're going to face when it comes to following Jesus. Not only is it going to be challenging, there's going to be times where it's uncomfortable. Following Jesus, sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable when it comes to following him. Like God is going to ask you to do things that maybe you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. Step out of your comfort zone. Invite a friend. Share your faith, right? Like there's going to be some things that God's going to ask you to do that might be uncomfortable. And so sometimes following Jesus is going to mean like, I got to step out of my comfort zone. I got to surrender something that I didn't want to surrender, or I got to follow his plans and not my plans. It's going to be uncomfortable. Sometimes it's going to be inconvenient, you guys, to follow Jesus. Sometimes it's going to be like really inconvenient to follow Jesus. Like there's going to be times where you got to say no to things that people are saying yes to, or there's going to be times where you got to say yes to things that everybody else is saying no to. Sometimes it means you're going to have to forgive people that are being unforgivable and they don't deserve it at all. Sometimes it means you're going to have to love people that everybody else wants to make fun of, and it's going to cost you some cool points. Sometimes it means, right, you're going to have to be the one in the locker room that doesn't participate in all the jokes. Sometimes it's going to mean that you're going to have to be the girl in your group that's like, I'm not going to keep talking bad about everybody and participating in the gossip, and that's going to cost you something. And so it's going to be a little bit inconvenient sometimes to follow Jesus. It's going to be inconvenient. Here's the deal, when it comes to following Jesus, I promise you this, you will still be tempted. Even though you surrendered your mess and all that stuff, there will still be times where you go home and you're still gonna be tempted with the same sin, the same struggle, the same stuff that you were struggling with before. You're still gonna be tempted. When it comes to following Jesus, you're still gonna face troubles. I promise you. Some of y'all, you're gonna go home and you're gonna walk through some stuff this next year. Some of you, your parents' marriage is not gonna make it. Some of you, you're going to walk through some hard times with some friends. Some of you, you're going to walk through some hard times relationally, and you're going to experience heartbreak this year. Some of you, you're going to walk through some troubles. You're going to have some troubles, even as a Jesus follower. Some of you, you're going to experience loss. As a matter of fact, all of you at some point in your life are going to experience loss. Someone will get sick. Someone will pass. You will lose something in your life. As a follower of Jesus, you will experience loss. You guys, following Jesus is not easy. It will not be easy, but he never promised that it would be. He never promised that it would be. You see, Jesus didn't promise us easy. He offers us better. Jesus didn't promise us easy. He offers us better. And so here's the deal, right? Like if I can turn this on a more positive note, so I don't just totally pee in your punch bowl. You know what I'm saying? Like if I can start to turn this on a positive note, listen, here's the deal. Yes, following Jesus is going to be challenging, but I promise you, because it's challenging, it's going to be rewarding. Because anything, right, like worth having is worth being challenged on. And the greatest things in your life that you've ever experienced came through opposition and challenge, right? And so yes, it's going to be challenging, but I promise you it's going to be rewarding. I promise you it's going to be rewarding. Yes, it will be uncomfortable at times, but I promise you on the other side of it, you will experience growth, because it's in the moments where we're put out of our comfort zone that we grow the most, isn't it? Yes, I promise you it's going to be inconvenient sometimes, right? It's going to be inconvenient sometimes, but you're going to watch your character grow. Because when you step up and you stand out and you're willing to do things that nobody else is willing to do, and you're willing to be the person when no one else is willing to be that, your character grows and you become more and more like the person of Jesus. So it's going to be inconvenient, but your character is going to grow. Yes, you will face temptation in your life and in your walk with Jesus. Yes, I promise you'll face temptation, but his promise to you wasn't that you wouldn't face temptation. His promise is that he would give you the strength to not be overcome by it. Yes, you will face troubles, but his promise wasn't that you wouldn't face troubles. His promise is that he would be with you, that he would be a comforter, that he would give you wisdom, that he would give you patience, that he would give you grace so that you can walk through any and all troubles that life has to throw at you. Yes, you will experience loss in this life, but his promise wasn't that you wouldn't experience loss. His promise is that he would always be with you, and that no matter what loss you experience, you are never, ever, ever alone. You guys, I need you to know, I need you to set the expectation in your heart that Jesus didn't promise you easy, but he offers you better. And so here's the deal. If you were expecting an easy life, if you were expecting something easy because you signed up to follow Jesus, then maybe you signed up for the wrong thing. But if you want better, if you want a life that's full of purpose and passion and meaning and fulfillment and peace and patience and hope and joy, if you want one of those lives, then buckle up and get ready to go and start following Jesus, because that's what Jesus offers us. It's not easy, but it's better. And when we know what to expect, we'll be able to endure, and that's our heart for you. Not just that you start, but that you stay following Jesus. And the key is to set that expectation in your heart. Know what to expect so that you're able to endure. So that seniors, when I hear about your stories later on down the road and I see you at another walk, you're able to say, I stayed following Jesus. And so now that's why I'm back leading as a co-leader in one of these groups. Freshmen, so when I see you again at one of these walks, you're able to look at me and go, yo, I'm still following Jesus. And that's why our freshman class grew bigger as the sophomore class. And then by the time you got to be seniors, you had a bigger class than what you started with. Wouldn't that be amazing if you guys could stay following Jesus? But the key is going to be setting that expectation in your heart, remembering that God didn't promise you easy, but he promises you better. And so then we can buckle up and get ready for the ride. Amen? Let me pray for us. Oh, yeah, you can clap. I'm going to pray for us real quick. Jesus, thank you so much that you're honest with us, that you're real with us, that you love us so much that you don't sugarcoat things for us, but you give us real expectations so that we're able to endure and to not give up. And so, Jesus, I just pray right now for all these students. I pray that you would set that expectation in their hearts. I pray that you would help them to know what to expect in this life, to know that they can expect troubles and trials and problems and pain. All of those things are coming our way. But, Jesus, I pray that as they expect those things, that they would also expect the promise that you're going to be with them every step of the way. Jesus, help us to remember that you don't promise us easy, but you offer us something way better. And so help us not to just start following you, but to stay following you. Give us the endurance, just like David, so that we can stick it through, see it through, and experience the life change that you offer. We love you, and it's in your name that we pray. And everybody said,